Class, and welcome to the final part 3 of understanding the edTPA assignment. It's really important that you watch this video all the way to the end because this is probably the trickiest part of the assignment. So you've already completed part 1, which was to locate a lesson plan and put it into a template. That was due February 10th. The entire assignment, as you'll note on this document, is due next week, not this week, but next week, March 10th, and it's worth 15% of your grade. After after part 1, you did part 2, which is the context, where you describe the school, district, classroom, and students. And now it's time to talk about part 3. So you have a lesson plan, you have a context. Now, how will you assess the lesson? So here's your job, to select one formative assessment that makes sense for your particular lesson. It could be homework, a checklist, a quiz, and use it to evaluate your students' developing knowledge and skills. So you haven't actually taught the lesson, so we're going to be using made-up data in this part. But it will mirror kind of what you do on the edPA, only you're going to be using real data. This should be an assessment that is completed by the whole class featured in the learning segment. So whatever your lesson is, you've taught it to the whole class. This is an assessment for the entire class. The assessment should reflect the work of individuals, not groups, but maybe individual work from a group task. And so I'm going to show you an example what a response would look like on the next slide. But for now, let's go to the second question. For the assessment, you have to describe how you will use it to evaluate students' skills or knowledge of the learning objective during instruction. So you've heard me talk about anchor papers and models to use for students. So I think this part is a little challenging. So I'm going to give you a model so that you'll see. I don't want you to use my exact model, but use it as a guideline for when you're creating part 3 of your own project. So I put a possible response in bold. For the first question, a formative assessment, how will you evaluate your students' developing knowledge and skills? You could write something like, I will use homework. That would be graded. So the formative assessment that I'm saying is homework. And the homework will consist of 20 items. So you should describe the assessment. 10 multiple choice, 5 true false, 3 short answers, and 2 matching. If you're using a quiz, give the same thing, the number of items, etc. If you're using a checklist, describe how many items are on the checklist and what it will measure, yes or no, or what's the unit that you're measuring. The items will count for 5 points each to be marked correct and incorrect. So you need to say how you're going to score it and how much each item would be worth. I will provide feedback to students regarding what they did correctly and incorrectly. So for the second question, how will you use it to evaluate students' knowledge or skills? You could write something like, I will score the homework on a 100-point scale and it will count for 1/10 of their homework grade for the semester. Half of the items are aligned with my first learning objective, and half are aligned with my second. So we're assuming this lesson plan had 2 learning objectives. If yours only had 1, then obviously everything's going to align with that, 100%. I will complete the analysis of each learning objective separately so I can understand students' knowledge regarding each objective. Then you're going to complete a table, make up the scores for 10 students. So students are numbered 1 to 10. You tell what type of data you collected, probably going to be some type of score. And then what was the outcome? Well, in this case, what was the score? And then you're going to list areas of strength and areas of weakness. So what could that look like? So I've created some imaginary data for 3 students. You're going to do 10. Let's take a look at this. So student 1, I collected a score on the homework that I mentioned. And since I had 2 learning objectives and it totaled 100 points, a possible 100 points, I'm going to break that out by student objective. So Student 1 scored 25 points, which you're going to see what the objectives are later on objective 1, and student 1 scored 50 points on objective 2. So that student did better on objective 2 for a total of 75 points on the homework. So you can see in the areas of strength, obviously, that student was stronger in objective 2 because the score was higher. So we're going to see that objective 2 was place value. So this is a math quiz, and objective 2 focused on place value. For areas of weakness, you can see that the student was a little weaker in objective 1 because they only scored 25 out of possible 50 points. And that objective 1, was 3 decimal division. So the student was strong in place value, weaker in 3 decimal division. Let's take a look at student 2. That student got a score of 50 points on objective 1 and 50 points on objective 2 for a total of 100 points. Well done, student 2. So they only had areas of strength. They were strong on place value and on decimal division. Sort of running the opposite way was student 3. That poor student scored only 25 out of a possible 50 points on objective 1 and only 30 on objective 2. So he only got 55 points on the whole homework. So his area of weakness was both objective 1 and objective 2. So we have one student who's very strong, one student that's student 2, one student who's very weak, that's student 3, and one student that's kind of in between, has a problem on one objective but not on the other. The fourth and fifth questions are your analytical questions. So number 4 says, analyze student work from the selected assessment to identify quantitative and qualitative patterns of learning within and across learners in the class. Which students are stronger on the learning target, which are weaker? How do you know? So this is where you look at the data, you break it down, and you say who's strong, who's weak, and maybe give some reasons why. Number 5 says select 3 students and provide the relative feedback you would give them to help them improve learning. Provide the actual words you would say to them or write on the paper to them. Use quotation marks. So this is about using effective feedback that we've talked about in these lectures. It should be specific and it should be encouraging, but it should help the student improve. It should encourage mastery learning. Let's see what examples of this might look like. So the text in bold is the answer to the first one, analyzing the student work. Let's see what it says. Student 2 was stronger on the first learning objective, 3 decimal division, as he scored 50 out of 50 possible points. Students 1 and 3 struggled with this objective, scoring only 25 out of a possible 50 points. This would indicate that students 1 and 3 need reteaching on this objective. On the other hand, both students 1 and 2 understood the second learning objective, place value, because both students scored 50 out of a possible 50 points. However, student 3 only scored 30 out of a possible 50 points on objective 2, indicating he needs reteaching on place value. Analyzing these patterns, I conclude that student 2 appears to have mastered both objectives and does not need any reteaching. It would be good to challenge the student with more advanced content, perhaps progressing to 4 decimal division. Student 2 appears to understand place value, but has not yet translated that into 3 decimal division. Some instructional modifications should be made to try another approach. A different worksheet and one-on-one tutoring will assist this student. Student 3 appears to neither understand place value nor 3 decimal division. Because place value is a prerequisite skill that must be mastered prior to division, the student would benefit from backing up and reteaching of this skill. Working with manipulatives in which students demonstrate place values would likely benefit the student. So this is the kind of thing they're looking for on the edTPA. They want you to use actual data in that case, and they want you to be analyzing it by your learning targets or objectives, and they want you to be looking for specifics on students and ways to improve. Number 5 on how the 3 pieces of feedback. So because I only gave you 3 students, I'm going to do all 3 students. For student 1, you remember that they appear to have mastered place value but not decimals. Nice work on the first part of this homework. You appear to have mastered place value. Now notice how you forgot to account for the third decimal place and did not move it over 3 place spaces in the divisor. Next time, count the number of places in the decimal and move it over that many places. So this is good feedback because it, first of all, it gives the student a compliment. You don't want to just say what they did wrong. Nice work on the first part of this homework. And then it's standards based, progress towards standards. You appear to have mastered place value, okay? And then the feedback is how to improve. It's specific for how to improve on the learning objective or target. And that's why we say it's standards based. Student 2, remember this student has mastered both objectives. Great work. You have demonstrated you understand place value and 3 decimal division. Let's try a more challenging problem, see below. So this is good feedback. Again, it's encouraging. It says what they've done, the progress they've made towards mastering the objectives, and it challenges them with advanced learning. Student 3, this is the student that struggled with both objectives, and it's kind of difficult sometimes to think of something positive to say to the student. You can see if they're making progress, if their scores have come up at all, which in this case I'm saying they have. You can compliment them on their attempts at solving and writing out the answers. So try to find something that you can compliment them on. In this case, I can tell you're making progress. You scored higher than you did on the last homework on place value. Remember that place value goes from right to left, ones, tens, hundreds. Next time we'll work with a cool toy that might help. So this is referencing the manipulative. And this feedback not only gives them a compliment, but acknowledges progress towards standard, gives them a way to improve, and then maybe gives them a little bit of an engaging hook that they can look forward to. So this is the kind of thing that I'm looking to see in your feedback. So I hope this video has been helpful, and if you have any questions, please email me. All of parts 1, 2, and 3 will be due next week.